Hello, everyone, and welcome to our brand new series, Let's Talk Enablement. This series is going to be exploring all the different areas of enablement, and series 1 is kicking off with a focus on onboarding. This first episode is going to be focused around designing an onboarding program, and to do that, we have our amazing panel of enablement leaders with us today. So I'd like to pass over to our series lead and moderator, Michele O'Brien, to introduce herself and the rest of the panel. Over to you, Michele.
Thank you, Jack, and hello, everyone. Happy first day of October. My name is Michele O'Brien. I am the Acting Director of New Hire Onboarding at ServiceNow, and I am based in St. Augustine, Florida. And I will answer a question I will be asking each of the panelists as we do introductions. What are you most excited about for the month of October? And for me in October, I'm really looking forward to the Florida weather cooling off a bit. And as always, really looking forward to watching more college football. So would love to introduce you to this panelist of sales onboarding professionals as we dig into our content. So would love to start with Garrett. Hello, welcome. And if you could introduce yourself, that'd be
Thanks
great.
much, Michele. Really appreciate it. Hey, everyone. My name is Garrett Rafols. I work at LinkedIn. And what am I most excited about for October? You know, I've been excited and continue to be excited about my 3 kids going to school because I've had them at home for, almost 2 years now. And it feels great to have some peace and quiet at the house now. So not that I don't love them or anything, I do, but it's nice to have that. Cool. And I'll popcorn it over to Carly if that works.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. So hi, everyone. I'm Carly Lehner. I'm the head of Rev Ops and Enablement at Andela. I am based in London, England, although I am American, so don't let the accent fool you. Something I'm excited about for October, I'm going to be seeing my family at a wedding in a couple weeks in Seattle, so long haul flight coming my way. And professionally, I've just hired now 2 people to join my team. One just started last week and one starting in a couple weeks, and already have tons of great ideas for enablement and onboarding, actually. So I'm just ready to get started, honestly.
Well, let's go. There's no better time than Q4.
Yeah.
And Tom, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for welcoming me. My name's Tom Cheriyan. I am the Senior Director of Learning and Development here at OnBackup. But again, for all intents and purposes, head of all things sales enablement. Have a team of 2, Lauren and Shara, that make up the sales enablement team, including me. And we're based in New Jersey, but I personally live in New York. And we have headcount to hire 6 more folks on the team. So we're absolutely blowing up like crazy. And what am I looking forward to in October? I don't know if it's like a New York thing or not, but I'll just own it. I'm looking forward to taking my daughters to go apple picking later this month. So they really like that. I really enjoy it as well. I think the best part of that is just all the apple cider donuts, which is the bomb.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So really looking forward to doing that. I think either it's probably next weekend. But yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Excellent. Well, and everyone in your organizations, especially if you are celebrating the first day of Q4, you are probably thinking about how to close out the year strong and what are your plans for 2022? Those plans may include launching a new onboarding program. So the purpose of this entire series is to help you with that. And today we are going to start at the beginning. We're going to be talking about how to design an onboarding program, thinking about how do you build that plan, content, structure, measurement, if any, thinking about the considerations, the challenges that you have, and then how to get buy-in on ideas and initiatives from the businesses that you serve. So again, let's start at the beginning. And our first question for our panelists of when you want to launch a new onboarding program, what are some of the first questions you should be asking when you build out that program? And as you answer the question, if you can share anything about an onboarding program that you yourself or your team have created, kind of weaving in that story, that would be great. Garrett, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on some questions you should be asking when you start an onboarding program?
Yeah, 100%. So this is actually pretty prime timing here, as we've just reimagined our onboarding program here at LinkedIn. And essentially, not to get too deep into the nitty gritty, what we've done is combined all of our new hire programs previously into one merged program. So it's been a pretty big lift, and we've learned a ton from that. And it's gone through a lot of ups and downs. So this is very, very fresh for me. The very first thing that I highly, highly recommend for anyone to do at the very beginning of creating a new hire program is to establish a vision. What is your vision statement? Real short and concise, targeted statement that says what you're going to accomplish. For us at LinkedIn, it's to create meaningful and memorable new hire experiences that ensure our employees are informed, engaged, and inspired by the work we do. That helps you to guide all of our decisions, help us to guide all of our decisions moving forward. So this way too, as we're prioritizing, or especially as we encounter crossroads when it's tough for us to make a decision on a top priority item, we use that vision statement, look at it, as well as guiding principles that supplement that vision to say, hey, this is where it should be in the priority list. And this is how we should go about tackling it, along with the dozens of other things on our plate. So that's the number one thing you need to do, is have a clear vision statement and use that as your sort of North Star. From there, you want to have clear program objectives. And ideally, you want those objectives to align to your business objectives. So what you're prioritizing in your new hire program needs to align perfectly with what the business cares about. And that could be different, right? It sounds easier said than done, but if the business is, for instance, going through growth mode, you want to focus on growth priorities. So how are you going to increase revenue? How are you going to ensure that you're laser focused on reducing ramp speed? How are you going to make sure that they're engaged quickly with the company? All of that is going to need to tie back to the company. So let that sort of guide your decisions. And then third is just choosing, I think, one that gets overlooked but still very important is what's in scope and out of scope. What will your company not do? Because you can't do it all. And especially if you're in growth phase, especially if you're catering to a large organization like LinkedIn, or even going through just massive, massive growth, you need to choose what's out of scope as well. Highlight that so that when you're collaborating with your leaders, when you're working with other teams, you can say, hey, here's what we're prioritizing. Here's what's simply not on our plate. And here's what you're responsible for, manager, or here's what you're responsible for, division. And this way too, you're prioritizing the right things. So that's my answer.
Vision statement, align with the business, what's in scope and out of scope. That is great, Garrett. Thank you. Carly, over to you. What are some of those questions that you ponder when you're starting a new onboarding program?
So Garrett actually said something around how he's combining multiple programs into one. So a question you have to ask yourself is, who's the audience of this onboarding program? So if you're a revenue enablement team and you work with all different types of roles within your organization, who are you creating this onboarding program for? If it's for everyone, chances are that onboarding program is going to be pretty general. And then are you going to have supplementary programs that just focus on account executive onboarding, for example, SDR onboarding, that sort of thing? Because what an account manager needs is going to be different than what an SDR needs. So it could be difficult depending on your business, how to combine everything into one program. So that's a question I would ask myself is, okay, who's the audience? And do I need to create separate programming? The other is timing. So are we expecting this to be an intensive 2-week onboarding program? Does it need to be spread out over a 3-month program? Like what is the leadership's team expectation of new hires coming in and being productive? So if they want them to be hitting the phones on their 3rd week, booking meetings as SDRs, you need to build a program that's going to fit into that preference. And then the other thing that you always have to consider is how you're going to deliver the training. And I think before COVID, we used to love flying everyone into the headquarters and having in-person training. In fact, Tom did an in-person training. He had it posted on his LinkedIn. I couldn't believe it. So he'll probably talk about that. But like, are we just doing everything over Zoom? Are we going to do some hybrid, self-paced? Like, you got to kind of think about those things, and if you're set up to be able to do that. But I think with that, probably a good segue over to Tom.
Oh, shit.
Absolutely.
All right. No pressure. So the question's kind of funny because I'm actually having to think about creating new onboarding programs. So, some context for everyone. Up until like a few months ago, I was the director of sales enablement at OnBackup, and then leadership basically tapped my shoulder and said, "Hey, can you do what you did so well for sales enablement, but do this for the rest of the organization, right? Create a really awesome onboarding program so that, whether you're a developer, an engineer, someone in finance, marketing, etc., we're setting up every single associate for success, not just for sales." And I said, yeah, for more money, I'll do anything. And, that's why they promote the senior director of L&D. And, I'm in the process of hiring those deans, those enablement leaders for those other groups to actually think through this. But, as it relates to sales enablement, for my process and for the process at OnBackup, like I took a step back and said, okay, like what is it about our company that makes us special? Because that's what I really want to double down and reinforce. And for us, it really just came down to like, what are our customers saying about OnBackup? So if anyone just goes on the App Exchange or G2 Crowd and reads the reviews about OnBackup, the scary thing, and I haven't seen this across a lot of technology companies, they're not writing about how awesome the product is. They're really writing about how awesome it was to buy from OnBackup. So they're name dropping reps, they're name dropping the folks from the customer support team, the customer success team. And from an onboarding perspective, it just made absolute sense that we need to instill the customer experience through our onboarding. So for example, in bootcamp, we're probably spending 5% on product training, but 95% on our sales process, because we actually see that as a competitive differentiator in the marketplace. That's what we're prioritizing to elevate the onboarding journey. The other thing I want to say, which I think is really important, onboarding doesn't start whenever you schedule boot camp. Like for us, it literally starts on day one, as I'm sure it is for all of you. So outside of just like setting up like your payroll and your benefits and whatever, like you would typically do on day one, my team and I, we've built this pretty awesome 30, 60, 90-day roadmap where we're very prescriptive. On day one, you're doing this. On day two, you're doing this. In your first week, you're accomplishing this. And it's the small things that you wouldn't think is worth documenting, but we're making it clear. As an example, like on day one, hey, send a message to the CEO of OnBackup and just say hi to him on Slack, as well as connect with him on LinkedIn. Unconsciously, maybe people are doing it, maybe people are not, but like we're documenting this and we're kind of sharing this with our new hires as part of their onboarding journey. Like, hey, these are the things we want all of you to do, because it is important for you to have relationships, not just with folks on your team, but with our CEO, our CRO, our CFO, so on and so forth, because they're absolutely here to help you be set up for success, whether it's sales, finance, marketing, you name it. So that's how we think about onboarding design at OnBackup.
That's great, Tom. Things that I heard there was really weaving in the customer focus into your onboarding programs, tailoring that journey, and even making recommendations on how to connect with internal teams. So there's a question in chat I'm going to get to, and then I'll kind of give a ServiceNow perspective. So Evan asks, speaking about the differences between audience, would love to hear some thoughts on onboarding for internal versus external hires. Do most folks have them go through the same program? So here at ServiceNow, we are in refinement of a program for new hire and promoted sales leaders. And it's a multi-week program where we have everyone consume the same content of things like how to be in that leadership mindset, how to lead and guide your teams, leveraging important dashboards and tools and things of that nature. And we find that there's a very nice alchemy in having promoted managers and new hire managers come in and share experiences. So as we just had our first teach of this, We're in a refinement phase now where we're evaluating feedback and then planning a global launch in Q1 of 2022. But that's something that I can share from a ServiceNow perspective is just try things and always let that feedback be your guide. And then you can continue to evolve your programs over the course of time. Well, so we've talked a lot about great things to consider as you first begin the process of launching an onboarding program. But let's also talk about who do we involve in this? Who are some good personas in the business to work with to really understand the needs of the onboarding program? Kind of to Garrett's point, and we'll start with you again, like what's in scope, what's out of scope, how do we align with the business? So Garrett, starting with you and your experience, really who are you working with in the design phase to ensure that you're hitting all the right notes out of the gate?
And I think that it's different for every company. I think that has to be point blank first and foremost, right? It's what similar to what I just mentioned in my previous answer. When you're thinking about creating that program and aligning it to the business priorities, that should also give you some direction as to who you should be catering to. So if you're focused on the overall workforce, right, you want to sort of establish relationships with leaders who across the board in different divisions, and then build your program based off of what's going to be relevant for everyone. If you're thinking about your sales force, it's going to be a little different. Similar to Tom's answer, you're thinking about process and methodology and certain competencies and customer alignment. If your demographic is going to be engineers, and your company is focusing on that audience within your workforce. Operational habits, managing projects, collaboration. So it's all dependent on what the business is going to care most about. That should help sort of guide you in those decisions.
Awesome. Carly, who are you bringing on the bus?
Yeah,
as you design your programs?
I like to bring on a manager, a frontline manager, because they are interacting with whoever we're training on a day-to-day basis. So we want to know like what good looks like, what they expect. I also like to bring in like a sales leader as well, kind of get like that culture aspect, like Tom was talking about, is super important. And then I really like to talk to reps. And I think it's really important to talk to a top performing rep. Like that's obvious. We want to like replicate our top performing reps as much as we can, but also talk to a rep who's maybe like a B player, who's on the cusp of being an A player, and figure out maybe what's missing there and see if we can incorporate that into onboarding and instill those best practices when people first start. Because if everyone could be A players, they would be. So there's something that's missing that enablement can absolutely help with. So I really like to just work with like all levels within whatever role you're training to get all different perspectives. So I think that's just really important, just to get a wide net. There's really no wrong answer, in my opinion, of who to talk to.
That's great. Wise points. Tom, what do you think? Who are you bringing on the bus to design the program?
That's a good question. So I think, and then the other thing I think you were talking about, like, is how do you deal with like internal promotions? Did that come up?
That was a question that I addressed as well. But if you have something else to offer, that would be great. Okay,
so I'll answer that second. But in terms of who we're bringing on the bus, it's very similar to what Carly said. So actually, for like, when we're doing onboarding and specifically like our bootcamp program, I personally am delivering maybe like 5% of the content. I have strategically tapped into specific sales leaders to elevate the conversation and kind of provide to our audience, everybody that's new to Own Backup, what are the perspectives from the top down. So for example, we have our CFO Jeannie, who will present on the current state of the business. And I think that's really important for people to understand, so they know where we were, they know where we currently are, and they know where we need to be by the end of the year and the year after. So it helps everyone become aligned in terms of like, what are they specifically doing as an IC or as a manager coming into Own Backup. Sam, our CEO, delivers a really awesome session, focusing a good chunk of his time, not just about how OwnBackup started, but like what is the culture of OwnBackup. One of the best, one of the other things we do during boot camp, which I really haven't seen other companies do, is we try as hard as possible to have just one of our, many customers present during boot camp. So,
Yeah.
Talking about, what the customer experience is like is one thing, but to actually have a customer present and talk about their journey, from the cold call all the way to closed one, but obviously from their perspective, the first day that they started getting value working with us and why they continue to choose working with us. Like it's a game changer. It's like, holy crap, like this is awesome. And this is the type of content and experience that anybody would want at any new company, right? Like it's different when you're hearing a VP of sales or a sales leader say like, hey, this is what our customers want, versus what the customer is actually saying directly to you. And then also creating that forum or that opportunity to do Q&A with a customer, because the reality is unless you're client facing, it's really hard to get that type of experience, right, or opportunity to do so. And then last but not least, I make it a point to leverage like our top AEs or SDRs to deliver content as well. I'm a big believer that, from our top reps, they have tribal knowledge, and we need to disseminate that tribal knowledge consistently to everyone else. So nobody's kind of rebuilding that tribal knowledge from the ground up, but they're understanding what are those best practices that our top reps are doing in order to be successful. So I want to say like maybe 30 to 40% of our content that we deliver from bootcamp, it's not just coming from leadership, but it's coming from individual contributors across the org. So AEs, SEs, solution engineers, SDRs as well. And that rounds out a really awesome experience, because now they're getting touch points from everyone, including our customers as well.
That's fantastic, Tom. And that goes a lot to what you were sharing earlier about weaving in that customer focus into your onboarding journey. And when it comes to SMEs, that's been another common thing that we've heard from Garrett, Carly, and Tom. You really have to weave in subject matter experts, key personas from the field of all different levels, as Carly explained, just to get several different points of view. We're in the process right now of launching a different onboarding program focused on a specific set of sellers, and we're in this motion right now. So we're working with executive sponsors, but we're also working with top field sales reps just to let us know what good looks like as we cast the vision of what the training could be, have them give us what the content should look like, and then we'll take it as an enablement team and package it up and be able to deliver it to new hires. So excellent, great. So we're designing a program, we're talking to our key constituents, we're thinking about how it will look. Well, really, when we get to the nuts and bolts of it, how will it look? Let's talk about structuring our program and even modalities. How do you think about, how does e-learning come into play? How does virtual instructor-led training or even live in-person training as Tom does? How does this all kind of come into play as you really begin that structuring of the program as you exit design phase and really think about implementation? So how about Carly? We'll change it up.
I'm a big believer in a hybrid onboarding program. Before COVID, I kind of had structured this, my onboarding programs to be hybrid anyway. I've done them all. I've done live, in person, but I found that a hybrid program works really well. So leveraging a learning platform, whether you have a formal LMS or a more sales oriented learning platform, to do the like 101 level type of training on like what is our product or who are our competitors or the types, and then do some live sessions that are more discussion based. So Sal Khan, who started Khan Academy, is a big proponent of the flipped classroom model. And I think that works incredibly well, especially with sales, because you need to digest the information, but then you want to come and discuss that with your peers and the experts. And so I really like having a little bit of self-paced, some live discussions, and then pitch practices. And a lot of these sales platforms out there are oriented to asynchronous role playing, which I think is really, really helpful. And then some certifications and things like that. So hybrid model for me is really what's worked well in my experience. I know people really miss the in-person. I miss the in-person facilitation sometimes, but if you want to do a really quick onboarding process, like that actually can work really well. And we have our SDRs onboarding in about 2 weeks with a program like that. That's been successful so far for us.
Awesome. Great ideas. Tom, you are our master of in-person training. You're like our unicorn right now. This is great. So talk to us about how you would structure onboarding programs.
Yeah. So one thing we've, acknowledged out loud as a company is like our culture by far is our most important thing, to us. And it's definitely been a huge factor in terms of just not just due to our success and, how we're doing as a company, but it just extends outward in a really obvious way to all of our prospects, customers, everyone else, and our customers say time and time again, like they can feel the culture. There's an energy, right? Like even if we're a premium solution, like they're happy to do it because of the value of the relationship and the culture that they're getting through their interactions with OnBackup. But that being said, we make it a conscious point that anyone that's starting on the first day of boot camp doesn't get to go to that boot camp. They have to, they go to the one in the following month. So we do boot camps every month. So pre-boot camp, everybody's taking those traditional courses through our LMS, which is Brainshark. And that's where they get to learn about OnBackup, our products, our sales process, how we go, just everything under the sun from that perspective. That's critical because when we get into boot camp, that's where we're not doing like more of the intro content, but reinforcing those concepts that they've learned through Brainshark, but also getting into other concepts and training that build off of that LMS content. And the great thing about doing it in person, so I think what everybody's talking about and raving about is the last boot camp we did in September, we had 50 new hires. The majority of them were able to fly out and do it in our New Jersey headquarters, but we absolutely do support hybrid. So for folks that are international, that can't travel in, or just due to whatever situation that they're unable to travel, they can also access the boot camp live training via Zoom. So that's a non-issue, but we are trying to drive a really awesome in-person boot camp experience. So during that boot camp, we bring all of that on-demand training to life. We make it an interesting event as well, where we do stand and delivers, which also reinforces one of our core culture values at OnBackup, trust through transparency. But from an L&D or learning perspective, learning about the product is one thing, but show me the product. Pitch to me in front of your peers, and they have to pitch to our VPs and other VPs of the business. And it's great because now everybody's getting to see how we give feedback and get feedback, which is also really important as part of our culture. So we don't talk about or train about how to give and get feedback. We're literally doing it through boot camp, which is awesome. And then we mix in some other elements that you really couldn't do on demand or virtually. So like we'll have like food trucks from New York City come in and just drive that type of experience throughout the week. I have an instructor from Second City do sales improv during boot camp. And that's just a really important skill because you're probably talking to that key persona, but that talk track changes based on the size of the company and the vertical and geo and everything else in between. So having those improv skills are absolutely important to be successful. And so I don't know if I'm summing it up right, but all of these different elements all together leads to a really awesome experience. And again, I think even though COVID is still here among us, we're able to do boot camps very safely within our New Jersey office. And when reps and other associates leave post boot camp, they feel very included, or they feel inclusive to the Own Backup culture. They feel very inclusive to the Own Backup company. They understand the mandate, the mission, and the engagement post boot camp. It's just insane. Like, they're just hitting the ground running after boot camp, because now they feel a part of the Own Backup story, and they're just eager and ready to kill it.
Excellent. Awesome. So Garrett, over to you. Talk to us about structure, that mix between e-learning, instructor-led training. How would you really structure these new onboarding programs?
So this is very fresh for me, as obviously we've had to reimagine our new hire program here at LinkedIn. So again, it'll be different for every company, but what I can do is break down the structure we have at LinkedIn, and hopefully for anyone on this call, you can hopefully you find this valuable. So we have a 3-phase approach where we have it's LinkedIn ready, or in this case, it would be company ready, customer ready, and then job ready. And so for the first 2 days, new hires, when they're brought on board, go to a mandatory learning and development session where they're given everything, right? Your company introduction, the history, exposure to leadership. More often than not, our top leaders will show up, and we do these new hire programs every single week, every single Monday across different regions. And more often than not, leaders will show up. And we do that intentionally because here at LinkedIn, we believe the new hire experience is something we call a 10x moment, right? There's no kidding that surveys across the board say that a great onboarding program is going to help reduce stress, reduce turnover, increase times of productivity, and ensuring that experience is as memorable as possible is going to help them to kind of feed them as they go through the program. So without getting too much off track, first 2 days are dedicated to them getting really knee deep into the company mission and bought into what we're doing. And then we put them through something we call the customer ready phase. Now, our program is very sales specific. And so we try to, because we're going through a major growth phase, we're trying to cater to those customer facing roles right now. So we put them through self-paced learnings. It's 2 weeks, a minimum, of them doing self-paced courses it has a mixture of modules. We use tools like SharePoint to house all the content, and our LMS is MindTickle, which helps us to sort of track on their progress, provide assessments and quizzes here and there. And along the way, we also provide these buddy guides. Now, we think buddies are a big part of the experience. Huge. We actually did a survey. So our parent company is Microsoft, and there was a survey done with Harvard Business Review where they found that 97% of new hires who met with a buddy at least 8 times in their first 90 days indicated they were more productive in their role. There's no doubt that having someone, especially in this world that we're living in, the hybrid world, the virtual world, to Carly's point, we need to embrace that. This is not going anywhere. And they can't swivel their chair anymore. They can't just walk to a desk or have that water cooler conversation. They can't have that anymore. And so what you need to do is prompt those discussions. And to Tom's point earlier, you need to be prescriptive about that. So those buddy guides that we provide, they're meant to be sort of breathers in between the self-paced learnings. We have a lot of content. We have an ocean of content, lots. And it can be a little overwhelming. The way we help manage that is to give them direct pauses in between the self-paced learnings, where we say, take a breather and talk to your assigned buddy or a senior member on your team. And here's a list of questions that directly tie back to what you should have covered in the self-paced learnings. So now what you're doing is actually reflecting on the content you just covered. Because we believe that the learning doesn't happen when you're learning, it happens after the learning. That's when the learning takes place, when you're able to take a walk and actually reflect on what you just went through, or have a conversation with someone and say, like, you know what, I didn't really get that. Can you clarify this or add some color to that? And that's when they get a real learning experience where they're able to talk it through and actually get all their most top of mind questions answered. So we put, new hires go through a minimum 2 weeks of that. For the majority, it's 4 weeks, where it's a mixture of self-paced learnings, it's buddy guide activities, and also guidance for the manager. We need to be very, very prescriptive too about how the managers are involved. And there's no doubt that manager involvement is going to directly impact an employee's engagement, right? So, and managers too, right now, especially in the world we're living in, they have a lot on their plate. There's a lot on a manager's plate, especially if they continue to stay with their same company throughout this pandemic. And so you're talking about business shifts, you're talking about shifts in market landscape and the job landscape and trying to find talent. A manager's head is all over the place, trying to manage their current team, trying to pull in revenue. and manage current quota attainments. So having a level set and come back down to a new hires mentality and say like, okay, so what are you learning, and go back to the fundamentals, it could be difficult at times. Having clear guidance, prescriptive guidance on the kinds of questions a manager and buddy should be asking will help to level set. And also the manager will feel like, okay, great, they're making progress, and they don't know everything, because you can't know everything. And the goal here isn't to know all the resources, it's just to be resourceful, to know where to go to find the answers, and not to know all the answers. So that's the customer ready phase. After that, we put them through live sessions. And our live sessions are 2 weeks of training where they learn the fundamentals of our methodology here at LinkedIn. It's delivering customer value, and we've taken up all the most recent sales books and read up on all the methodologies and use that as a sort of pillar for how we deliver the content. So this way it's super up to date, and it's in line with the top sales practices across all industries. And we actually do that in an every other day format. So it's called structured practice. Some of the best video games do this. Where you go through a level and then you practice what you've learned from that level before you go to the next level. That's what we do. And similar to what we did with the buddy guides in the self-paced learnings, we give new hires a chance to pause after a full day of training. It's typically about 3 to 4 hours. And we say, hey, here's a guide for you to go back to your buddy or to your team to ask another list of questions. Again, we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of this virtual environment and giving them the chance to reflect. They then go through certifications. These are typically role-play simulations. So to everyone's point here about, a whiteboard demo. In our case, Tom, to your point, the sales process is big. So product knowledge is obviously really critical, but for us too, a big part of what we feel are our unfair advantages is having the ability to create strategic conversations, to build that strategic relationship. And you do that by knowing how to provide a great discovery call, proper scoping conversations, establishing your buying committee, things like that, just a couple examples. And we test them on that, whether or not they can actually manage strategic relationships. Once live sessions have ended, they go through the every other day format. It actually doesn't end there. They then go through the final phase, which is job ready. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to accommodate tons of different kinds of employees in our program now because we merged it all. So this is when they actually break apart and focus on content directly relevant to their job, within their function, within their business line. And it's 15% we call business line agnostic, 85% specific to their business line. Well, then they'll get to learn more about best practices within their team, how to manage their territory, collaborate with certain cross-functional partners that are most relevant to their role, and really get nitty-gritty into solution selling. So uplifting product knowledge to solutions. What other resources are out there? What are blogs worth sharing with customers? What are our services? What certain data or insights should we mention to customers that prove our expertise? And that's like really just fleshing out what was all taught in the self-paced learnings and the live sessions. So that's the full structure right there. It's a full 60-day program broken up into 2 parts, month 1 and month 2. And then after the 60 days, they're on their way tackling their book of business.
Excellent. So what the key themes that I'm certainly hearing are, it's a mix of self-paced online learning, such as we have the same thing at ServiceNow with MindTickle, but it's also a mix of practicing and reflecting with others being your fellow boot campers, others being your buddies, your managers, and then, really ensuring that you're talking about product knowledge at the right time, at the right way, but maybe focusing first on culture, who your company is, your competitive differentiators, then transitioning to practice, and then also weaving in product knowledge as well. So excellent. As we look to close out this first session of really how do you start thinking about onboarding programs, we've talked about how do we design a program, who do we involve, what would that structure of the program look like, both as we design it, but then as we go to execute. But the final piece of the puzzle is we have to manage this program. And there are several questions in chat regarding what's the structure of your enablement teams, and especially for smaller companies, startup companies, when do you invest in an enablement team, and does the right number of enablement professionals look like in a variety of organizations? So how about Tom, let's start with you. If you could give us your thoughts on, how to kind of structure an enablement team, especially as you look to roll out new programs. Maybe share a little bit about the number of enablement professionals on your teams and what that looks like to give folks some ideas.
Sure. So I'll say this: when I started at OnBackup, I was the first sales enablement professional because I was essentially hired to be the first and lead the team. But it was just literally a team of me, and I was probably the 208th employee that started. And I was asked, I had to be a jack of all trades. I had to do everything, right? So I had to create, first of all, buy an LMS, and we ended up choosing Brainshark, build the courses and content out for that. Think about our onboarding structure and program. I recall starting, I love telling the story, on the first day of boot camp, when I started at OnBackup, and by the end of that boot camp experience, like if I was an AE, and I spent 10 years before coming on backup being both an AE and a sales manager, like it wasn't designed what it was supposed to do, right? Which was to get me ready to absolutely kill it. So I had to tear that down and rebuild that back up. And look, it's just a lot of work because you have to do a little bit of everything. And I spent maybe the first 2 months when I started, not just going into the deep end and start building, but let me take a step back. Let me understand our sales process. What is our competitive advantage or competitive differentiators? What does our product look like? What is our product story? What are the reps that are telling our story well, and start capturing that tribal knowledge? And that's a full-time effort just to be able to take a step back and do that. So I think my advice to everyone is, I think the industry average is like for every 50 to 80 people you have, you need someone in sales enablement. But we're at the point right now where we have over 500 folks. I think we're at like 530, 540. So it's me now with 2 other sales enablement ICs reporting up to me. But now I'm trying to build out a machine that scales. So I'm hiring, for example, 1 person to specifically own bootcamp. Right now, it's still me that owns it, but that's sucking up maybe 60% of my time, which is not that good. I mean, I love it, but it's a time suck. So someone needs to manage it. I'm hiring another person that will be our first instructional designer at OnBackup. So he or she will be responsible for being 100% focused on building and refreshing all of our courses in Brainshark. Because right now we're just being stretched in so many different ways. Managing priorities matter. I can't drop bootcamp, but I can drop building courses in Brainshark. And so as a result, maybe we published 1 or 2 courses last quarter. But as we continue to launch new products and services to market, and today we just launched Microsoft Dynamics, backup and recover for Dynamics. We need that on-demand content. We need all the other content, and we need to re-architect the content in Bootcamp just to support that new story for OnBackup. So I think depending on the stage of where you are as a company, first start with 1. But depending on whether you're in growth mode versus hyper growth mode, in our company, we're in hyper growth mode. I'm now trying to build a machine to scale as the company experiences hyper growth.
That's great. How about you, Garrett? Structure of enablement, not only at LinkedIn, but if you think about smaller companies as well, what would some of those recommendations be?
Yeah. So for me, our onboarding team is on the sales enablement team. So we're part of sales enablement. Our focus is to prioritize our salespeople and those in customer facing roles. I would say that for those in smaller companies, because ours, in our company, we have, well over 100 people in our sales enablement team who are supporting, who are dedicated to certain business lines. I would say for smaller companies, be sure to have a team of people. Ideally, you'd have a tiger team of folks who are supporting your business and being very specific to certain roles. So the way we sort of structure it, kind of like fleshing it out, when a sales enablement team is dedicated to a line of business, they're doing, we'll break it down. It's a sales enablement manager kind of leading the charge, being the conduit between leadership and sales enablement, and then by virtue of the sales people. And then you have people dedicated to certain pockets. So a sales enablement person dedicated to driving business and supporting account executives. Another one supporting our relationship managers or account directors who support those who are farmers, or in this case, managing current business. Those who are supporting our customer success people. And typically you have people dedicated to those pockets. Now I understand that it's a lot to ask for, right? You can't always have that, you know. In Tom's case, it's only a couple of people who are in sales enablement right now. There's the super nascent stages. So if it's still sort of you're still in the beginning of stage like that, you want to just have a very close relationship with your direct stakeholders. That is the number one thing you need to have. Your programs and projects need to directly tie back to what your stakeholder cares most about, and that should tie all the way back to the CEO and how they're thinking about the business. That's just clear cut and dry, the number one thing you should do. And then from there, understand how to directly support it. So again, you have to ask really good questions. It goes back to sales, right? If it's increasing revenue, focus on your account executives driving sales. If it's keeping your current clientele and making sure that there's, you know, you're mitigating churn, focus on those who are your account directors. Similar world, but a different set of best practices. So that's what you need to do and that's the number one skill. It's an evergreen skill, and it's one that's going to be relevant for really anyone here in this call, is that you need to have a great relationship with your key stakeholder and communicate as often as possible, as early and as often as possible with that stakeholder. Establish that relationship. This way too, you know how to prioritize.
That's great, Garrett. Carly, your thoughts?
My role, my role at Andela, this is the second time I'm building a team. So I've built a team. Oh, I'm sorry. Got calls coming in on my Mac. Problem with being connected to every possible device. I, like Tom, have been a single practitioner, and it is fun, would be a nice way to put it. It was incredibly stressful. And I was supporting, about 150 people in the sales organization. And it's just like impossible to make meaningful progress when you're one person with that many people. So like Tom said, you can't go deep. Mm-hmm. You have to go wide, jack of trades, master of none, like kind of thing. So, but at Andela, we have a team of 5, including myself, and we're supporting about 100 people. So we have a really great ratio, and it's something that I'm really happy about. We have leadership who's fully bought in on enablement. And so how we're structured is there's myself, and then I have someone who's dedicated to SDR enablement, both from our SMB business and our enterprise business. So he works across, both functions. I have someone who works with our client partners or our account managers. I have someone who works with account executives. And then I've hired someone who will manage the onboarding program. So he will manage all programs for revenue. So whether it's like the entire revenue team and then the individual programs, kind of like what Garrett was talking about with being like LinkedIn ready versus job ready. And then there's me just taking, whatever else is thrown at us pretty much. But I'm really excited about this because I will finally feel like enablement can truly provide the value that we can because we have the right team in place. And so having a person dedicated to onboarding, I think, is really important, especially if you're even hiring like even a couple people a month. If your business is changing a lot, that means onboarding has to change a lot. And to ask an enablement person to do that off the side of their desk, like Tom said, those Brainshark, we use Showpad, those courses are not getting updated if it's something they have to do on the side of their desk. But in terms of like who manages onboarding, even though we have an onboarding program manager, I said to him in our one-on-one this week, I don't want you facilitating the live sessions because then you will be spending all of your time facilitating and never updating it and making sure that it's current, finishing out all the programs for all of the different teams. So, and I shouldn't say never. If there's like a session that's like, who is Andela or who are our competitors that applies to everyone? great. But if it's like, how to use Sales Loft for SDRs, like we can have a sales manager do that, or SDR manager, or a rep. So getting the leaders and reps involved is so important. And it also reminds them that onboarding is not just an enablement activity, it's an entire team activity. We don't just like take the new hires and then throw them over the fence to onboarding and have enablement deal with it and then throw them back over to their managers. So it has to be a collaborative effort. So I actually am like pretty strict about like, I don't want enablement leading a majority of these live sessions. Like Tom said, like 5%, that's fine. Because then we'll just never get out of facilitation. And we have a lot of things that we want to do and like make sure that we further improve onboarding. And it's like a little piece of advice there is like, just start with something and then iterate. Like, don't wait to have like this perfect onboarding program to get it started. Like, I just helped move out of a Google spreadsheet into a couple Showpad courses, and that was like revolutionary for some sales leaders. And like, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's what my new hire is going to be doing. So even just like incremental improvements, I think are really, really important. And having someone dedicated on enablement to do that is like probably one of the best things that you can do. And I wish I hired for this, like when I joined Andela in January. I waited thinking that I would be able to handle it and do everything else, which is just silly. So hire for it as soon as you can is my advice.
Yeah. I think a great theme that everyone is sharing is that when it comes to creating new onboarding programs, no matter the size of your company, is that it takes a village, and bring along people to help with content design, with facilitation, including, you know, your sales teams or the people who know that specific aspect of whatever you're training the best. To Carly's point, it's not all on you. So especially if you're starting small, start with something, iterate it. And then when you can do something like moving from a Google spreadsheet to an actual application, then you are the hero of the organization. So we are going to wrap in just a moment, but I'd love for each of our panelists just to maybe share one parting thought with our audience of just one other thing to consider when creating an onboarding program. How about Garrett, we start with you.
If there's one thing I could suggest, one nugget that I think is absolutely most important for an onboarding program, it's whoever's leading it should be passionate about the company. You essentially act as the face of your company, and you should embody your company's top culture and values. And so, you know, when an employee joins, you need to make sure that you're establishing a fantastic first impression, and that person needs to fully embrace and believe also in your company's purpose, your mission, and the vision in which you're heading towards. So that's the number one thing I can provide. You have to bring the energy. You got to be passionate about the company and what you're serving. And when people come to your program, they need to really be inspired. You're not just informing them and throwing content at them to say like, this is all the things you need to know. You need them to get bought in by what you're doing, and this will help them to feel as if they made the right decision for your company. I saw a survey recently from the Aberdeen Group that 86% of new hires make their decision about whether to stay long-term with a company in their first 6 months. You have 86% of people who believe in that, and I'm also part of that group. You have to make sure that when they join, you're the host of a big party, and in their honeymoon phase, you got to capitalize on that and make sure that you're bringing it.
That's great. Carly, one last parting thought.
And I think it is so important to incorporate feedback from your new hires after the program finishes, and even during the program, ideally. But when you iterate your programs and improve it over time, the feedback from the people who have gone through the program when it's fresh is super, super important. So I usually like to do a check-in with new hires. When it was just me doing, a couple a month, it'd be every 30, 60, and 90 days. But now it could be just, at the end of the program, have a check-in with them, or even like 2 weeks later after they've been doing the job for a couple weeks, and then, okay, what do you not remember, or what do you need a refresher on now that you're doing the job and you're a few weeks out from boot camp? That feedback will be super, super valuable to help you further refine your program. And it's okay if onboarding's not perfect, like nothing really is. So just getting that feedback to help improve over time is something to really plan for.
Passion, feedback to make it better. Tom, what do you have?
I think I'm kind of screwed. I don't know what more to add.
That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, Garrett and Carly pretty much nailed it. I think first of all, both of them are spot on. That's what I live by. There's no two boot camps that I've done that are exactly alike. We're constantly iterating on it. And to Garrett's point, I consider boot camp kind of like almost like a second interview, but at the end of it, I'm just ensuring like there's validation from everyone that's attending that, holy crap, I made the best decision possible by accepting that offer letter with Own Backup. And if they feel that way, then it's a win. The only other thing I would add is I love this when it happens during boot camp, and it happens a lot, so I love it, which is we're presenting on a topic or on a session, and because of the engagement from everyone, like we spend a lot of time focusing on this one thing versus trying to go through all the content that we were supposed to go through in an hour. I really want everyone to just kind of know that one thing really, really well versus, okay, here's like everything we can throw at you and you really don't know enough of anything. Those are the types of problems I love to see from boot camp. So that's what I'm trying to architect unconsciously or consciously throughout the boot camp and onboarding experience. Like, how can we ensure that our new hires are just not only understanding everything, but also understanding maybe this one thing really, really well. And yeah, from our perspective, like that's how I define what a winning onboarding program looks like.
Excellent. So we've got passion, we've got incorporating feedback to evolve the programs, we've got focus and learning at least one thing so well, and validating your decision to join the company. I would add also finding ways to deliver feedback to the new hires on their performance. Something that we do is we do a series of role plays where we give actionable feedback. And it's a lot of food for thought. We congratulate people for trying new things in the role plays, but we give them a safe space to practice and learn. One where they don't feel critique or judgment, but they really do get that actionable experience and helps them grow in their confidence. So layering that into your onboarding programs would be very well served. Well, I would love to thank Garrett, Carly, and Tom for your ideas, your opinions, your shares. This is great for all of you out there. We hope that you have learned from this session, but there's more to come. We've got 2 more sessions, one more in November, one more in December, where we're going to continue to dig in to the topics of all things onboarding. So as we close and before we head it back over to Jack, I just want to wish everyone a magnificent October. And if this is the start of your Q4, I hope that you start strong. Thanks, Jack. Over to you.